Yeah. So yeah, what is this? What is this?
What is this? This is the first and last and only podcast about ShortHaus that will ever exist because you're leaving.
Because I'm leaving, yes.
And it's really sad. Mm-hmm. And I've wanted to do this for a little while since we had a year, and that was a big thing. But we also did a film competition at the same time, so that was just a bit too much. But, just want to check in. How are we doing?
Yeah.
Are we doing what we set out to do?
I think so. I think in some ways, yes, right away. But in other elements, the filmmaking element, I feel like that's just caught on in the last few months.
Yeah. I think the film competition for sure helped bring in some new people and recontextualize the group a little bit more. We're still getting a lot of the same faces, but now people are actually bringing in some work, and that's what we wanted from the beginning.
We did, yes. We wanted it to be, so there used to be a filmmaking group before you started here, and I was sad to see it go, but I didn't know anybody who was in it and stuff. The previous person who did it knew all the people, so he left, and then it just disappeared. But film has always been something I'm very passionate about, so to have the opportunity to co-host, co-chair a new filmmaking club, and to know that it's going to go on after I leave.
I'll try. I'm going to try so hard. Yeah, it's definitely something that I wanted from day one because I knew it used to exist. I don't know how I knew. I don't know if there were just old calendars of programming or something that I saw. I was like, why does this not exist? And then I realized why. And it's like, well, how do we get something going again? Because film club is great, but also filmmaking is great. And there's a lot of great creative people around.
And there's all this wonderful technology
so much wonderful
down
technology
here that we keep getting.
Just about everything you would need to make a film. Just about literally everything. So yeah, really incorporating film appreciation, but also filmmaking.
Yes, and the film competition certainly did that, and we've seen a number of people just asking randomly, where do I submit films? And it's like in ShortHaus. That's the other half of ShortHaus.
Yeah.
To submit your short films and get them watched and critiqued if you want from other members of the film appreciation community, other cinephiles that attend. So we've done a couple so far. We've had submitted just for the general ShortHaus. We had 8 wonderful films submitted for the competition.
They're so good. And I think 5 or 6 of them are online to watch.
Yes.
On our YouTube, which is great because you should definitely watch them because they're lovely. They're just so lovely and so unexpected. So many different skill levels and genres and interests just all coming together to just not what I expected, but what do you expect? I come from a very different background, and I have a lot of very niche interests that, could not expect what just the people of Bolingbrook would create and show up with.
And it's amazing what, a person who's like, I'm going to make a film, my first film or my first short, things that would terrify me or shots I would never try, it doesn't even occur to them that it's difficult or that
they just haven't learned to be afraid yet.
They're just like, I''ll do that shot.
Just do it.
I don't know how long it took them, but oh my goodness, did they deliver?
Some of them so good. Oh, and just the one who did ADR was crazy, unnoticeable, just so talented. And the winner, the young winner, he was so good.
Again, just who attempts to do moving shots in a stop motion film?
Wild choices. So good. So great to see someone that young pestering his dad to get this film done and get it submitted. And there's a reason he won because it's so good. It's so awesome. And everyone was so happy to see it. And also just the night we shared the films, how long people talked. We had an hour set aside for this program, and it that was not even close to enough.
No.
We were right up to the library was closing, and we were still trying to pack everything up and give out the prizes and get everyone out of the building. It was everyone just kept wanting to talk.
If I could go back, we'd have done like an entire afternoon.
Yeah, it was so lovely. People have so much to say. People love seeing other creatives just making things so they can talk about them. Because you watch a good film, you can't just talk to the director.
What am I doing?
How dare?
It's because of that sublimation project. We're just going to have to edit around this now. That ding was me having a thought.
Oh, ding.
No. Like I could segue, but no.
No, you can't. Wow.
But speaking of watching films and wanting to talk about them, that is the other half of ShortHaus, which is to not only just watch. There's the temptation to still just watch known directors, even their short films, which are probably lesser known, but I'd say one of the core elements, at least for us in doing ShortHaus, was just going through all kinds of directors and like of the 12 directors we feature every year, we're probably watching another 2 or 3 directors' shorts for each of those at least, just to figure out who we want to do.
Yeah. For some, I watched about 10 shorts just to figure out our September director / directors, because it's a pair. That is just challenging. I mean, in some ways we are limited because we're trying to focus on things that are on Canopy or Hoopla, things that like are available for anyone to watch or just like freely available on the artist website. But then you have to sift through and try to find something that really hits the mark, just like this is good quality, this is a director that we can talk about for an hour if we need to, and there's something relevant. They're bringing something to the table that's unique, because you don't want to see the same generic stuff over and over and over again.
No.
You want to see some interesting stuff.
No, but it's been an absolute blast, just from directors whose names I recognize to some of them who I've seen some of their stuff, like George Lucas, who's technically the second year. Ridley Scott was in the first year, and I've seen a bunch of his works, but had not seen his shorts or knew much about his early filmography. So to just kind of delve into, in his case, what he was working on early, how he got his start, and how that influences their approach to filmmaking, because he has a very, a very reliable way of making his films that makes, these major production companies confident that, you give him $200 million to make a film, he's going to finish the film.
And it might be. It's watchable. It's usually watchable.
It's usually watchable. It's usually beautiful to look at.
Yes.
It's a question of, does it emotionally hit or not? And I'd say his past few, not so much. But, what did he learn, and what's contained in his early shorts that shows you, oh, okay, this person knows how to block a scene or edit a scene together. If he didn't storyboard it, he is a devout storyboarding director. So he basically has the film all done before he's even set up a camera, which is insane in my eyes. I've never had a creative project like that. Yeah,
but I'm also a disaster. But yeah, never that much planning. But it does make me tempted to I should actually just write a script for something and see what happens, and still letting it evolve naturally and seeing what changes, but actually starting with some sort of a plan, so maybe it doesn't feel quite as chaotic in the making, and actually capturing some beautiful shots that were just in your head rather than just bring a camera to a place, see what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, planning helps.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another director who we talked about was Akira Kurosawa. And never mind the possibility that the Car V might be starting at any moment. I hope not. Or maybe he's moving
he's
it.
taking it away.
Or he's taking it away. Come to Studio 300. Check out the recent changes to our Maker Lab, which are happening live as we record
as
this.
we speak, yes.
But Akira Kurosawa was an interesting one. Because again, he had that artist background. He wouldn't. I'm sure he storyboarded, but he would have these beautiful paintings that would inform the shots that he would do. But more so, his short collection that we watched, Dreams, came at the end of his career.
Yeah.
And so it was very interesting, I think, because he definitely felt more fleshed out, more just. I don't know, just everything was in its place, which he's that kind of director by nature.
And he had some very big ideas he was coming to the table with.
Huge ideas. And a very, again, discussing, just the emotional resonance of those works. That is a very taxing, in the good way, collection of shorts to watch. They're just really intense.
A lot of the directors we chose were very taxing emotionally, which just kind of speaks to us as people, I think, of our interests, our focus.
The world that is indie and short films in general typically are not, not typically, but one could generalize that many of them are taking on topics or themes that mainstream audiences are not necessarily chomping at the bit to consume.
But it is what gets them noticed at festivals and things, and then what gets them those bigger things, those bigger films. And it's about whether they continue those focuses or kind of go more mainstream. Like someone like George Lucas, but that's fine. He has some interesting ideas early on.
It's so, like, those ideas, I think, it's interesting because I feel like in some, like, the prequel trilogy, those are getting at ideas he's talking about with his shorts.
Yes.
But does the medium of a blockbuster $100-200 million film negate everything he's trying to prove a point about?
And the use of digital is that as much as it is, it's just distracting. A lot of it distracting from what he's trying to say, which is, there's some interesting stuff in there, but it's also very distracting.
So who would be a director we possibly looked at where not necessarily just digital technology, but the use or embellishment of technology was not distracting, but you felt was a core to the themes that they're trying to convey? I've got one in mind, but I want to hear who you say first.
Do you want to limit it to the first 12, or do you want to...
First 15, yeah. If you can remember those other three.
Oh, you're
Are we
saying
even at 15?
Yeah, 12, 15, and then summer makes 18. Yeah, first 15. The technology. I think Jim Henson is a big one, actually, because especially reading his biography, the reason why his puppetry was so good is because of the way it interacted with the TV, and so that, you're feeling that they're creatures in their own right up against the screen. It doesn't feel like they're puppets necessarily, and how he continued to use that in his longer features, but also the shows. And as technology advanced, he kind of just ran with it. So he got really good at making just pristine puppets with like the help of his workshop and everything. But then with the digital technology, the short that was for, I forgot what exactly it was for like one of his weird, almost like variety shows where he made a short, for the rainforest one. And the digital elements included in that are just like so fantastic, blended in with the still very tactile puppets, and they're on foam ferns, and like the sets are all built out, but then the background is digital, but you don't really notice because it's just like a mess of a forest. And then that it's just playing with each other really nicely, and that he was one to just like willing to play with it, but also not trying to make it seamless. I think sometimes when it's seamless, it's not always as interesting, but not jarring, but layered on top of each other in a very playful and fun way.
Nice. Yeah, Jim Henson and would go on to work with George Lucas on some of his projects. So he's an interesting, I guess, foil to that conversation in terms of using the technology to, again, and I think something that I was surprised by, just in looking at Henson's work, was that he didn't want to be pigeonholed as like a kid's entertainment, persona, only making kids. He wanted to make other topics. And so taking a look at some of those other pieces, like Timepiece, his short, and just the other stuff he came up with, it's like this person's just an artist who's brilliantly learning and fusing different technologies together. He's a good choice. I was going much earlier in my mind. I was going to say Georges Méliès first, but then did you talk too long? But yeah, I was going to say Georges Méliès. It's almost cheating though, because every use of the technology, was something he or one of the other early filmmakers were discovering. But I think how he used it early on with his magic, motifs and stuff was, it worked. And it was very successful. I think where he probably was disappointed was that his audiences or the audiences weren't interested in his longer works as much, which is sad, because then you see somebody like Alice Guy Blaché, who only made a handful of things that are still preserved, but was going kind of the less gimmicky and just right into we're telling stories with these, we've got moving images, we're telling stories with them. And then you have somebody like Buster Keaton, who's kind of, again, in between, a little more success, but is using the technology and, the art of editing to, create slapstick comedy and other types of comedy that, again, just use the technology for a purpose instead of just for it to be used. And I think one could argue that, while it might be more difficult to make a major motion picture without CGI, sometimes things are lost just in leaning on them right away instead of seeing what you can do with practical effects.
I mean, I guess if you're very cognizant of it and you're planning ahead of time, I think there's ways to make it work. But just, I'm very vocal about it, just like the state of modern blockbusters that are just everybody filmed in a big green warehouse being flung around in zip lines, and then the world is just CGI'd around them. It's just plastic. It's just nothing, and it's not interesting. Where all of those earlier people, they had more skills than just being able to point a camera and direct a team of mostly unknown digital artists who are now having to deal with crunch, I think, is also the other thing, is I don't think they're being as fairly compensated, or they're having to get it done way faster and the quality is much lower. But like Buster Keaton, he was just already skilled at all of the gymnastics and doing those like pratfalls and things. He just had those skills and then incorporated them into the filmmaking.
It's like, let's just have a house fall around me.
And it's awesome. It's so
awesome.
good.
Jaw dropped.
Yeah. Just, it requires being artistic and thinking creatively in a lot more ways. Which I think is what we see with a lot of the people we featured. Like, a lot of people were artists first and then just kind of shifted into filmmaking as they realized that's just kind of the medium they wanted to tell stories in. I mean, because I think a lot of my blog started with, and this person was also an artist.
Yep.
And that's wild, right? Because even Allison McLean, I think, went to school. I don't know if it was like sculpture or something, but and you can just see that kind of stuff because her use of color is beautiful. It's astonishing, and then she's just telling these very rich interpersonal stories around it, but the color is always forming it. It's just so lovely. And Maya Deren.
I stick on McLean just for a moment. Like, I love how we went into that because that was our October director, and we're just looking for a scary short film.
Just something spooky.
And we found Kitchen Sink, and we're like, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And we just picked her on that. And we're like, she's got some other films on Canopy. We'll go with it. We'll see what these other ones are about. And then suddenly we're watching these beautifully shot films, rich in color.
So good.
With some of the best color.
Kitchen Sink is
theory.
like black and white.
It was so unexpected.
And yeah, it's just this weird, because we wanted scary, but not too scary that you can show it in the library.
Yeah.
But yeah, her feature length films are so and her shorts are lovely too. Like all of her, there's such a variety. Kitchen Sink is like the outlier.
Yeah.
Because so many of them are focused on just like these grounded stories of people that feel real and fleshed out, and Kitchen Sink leans into this like fantastic element where it's still telling kind of like a story about a domestic relationship and kind of like the intricacies, but using this very poetic visual language of this like hairy beast man that was also something she pulled from the kitchen sink, and this knot of wiry fetus almost. It's so strange and evocative and so lovely. And I also remember that meeting, I think it was one of our lower attended ones, and the response was just like, weird.
I mean, it's a very valid reaction to that film. But yeah, seeing her filmography, or more of her filmography, was certainly a shock based on seeing that one first. But you know, there were some links, and as you detail in your blogs beautifully, almost every month, minus one that I did, which pales in comparison.
But hey, that blog was what left my collage on the internet to then be found by some librarian in Virginia who now just wants to use them. So that's pretty cool.
That's pretty awesome.
It's pretty cool.
But yeah, talking about other directors who have an art background, not necessarily a visual art, but also a performative art. Maya Deren had a background in dancing, and
it shows.
And it shows.
She's so good. Another one, fairly well known to, I think, certain people, because even Allison McLean cites Maya Deren as an inspiration. So it's like, if you're in the know, you're in the know, but it was just not a name I had known before, and she has quite a few on Canopy, and just being so blown away, 'cause she's in that period of like surrealism, but like later surrealism, I think, right?
Because it's primarily late 30s, 40s, and then into the 50s with most of her work.
Yeah, they're just so lovely. And the camera movement, but then her bodily movement. And they almost all of them feature her, right?
Yeah, most. I'm trying to think if there was one that didn't. I feel like there's at least one where she's not on screen.
Maybe.
I could be wrong, though.
The
name's not coming to mind if there is one.
Yeah, she's usually on screen doing some like ethereal movement, even if it's just like moving through a house that then kind of at some point is a different like it's just swimming through this location almost, because she like jumps through the window in meshes of the afternoon and is like chasing after herself. Just very weird, surreal imagery that was, I mean, in some ways, like those reflections and those like dualities I think were kind of commonplace with surrealism, but the way she used it is just so.
It just, the stuff she came up with, I mean, it's the 40s. Film had been around for 40 years by then, but it's stuff that you see in major blockbusters, like the spinning staircase and meshes of the afternoon. That's like Inception level filmmaking there in terms of the spinning hallway, and she's doing it with a single camera in a room that does not spin.
Yes.
And is making it look like it's
and just
upside down.
Flinging her body against the wall and just, and just that, the way she moves her body, it's just so beautiful because she does have that background in dance, and it just adds to that surreal nature because this isn't like a normal person moving through space. So she's like transcending on so many levels.
And her like manipulation of time was another thing that I felt was ahead of its time in terms, no pun intended, but just like, what's the one where it's always freezing? It's not mesh. Figure something in time.
Yes, something in time.
Something in time with dancers going through like a courtyard area, but it keeps freezing and then unfreezing, and it's just, I can't name another film from that era that's like that, or other than maybe, again, if you're getting into the surrealist filmmakers like Buñuel or something, very much just felt fresh and was impressive to see the use of that, but also have it still be, I guess, again, not a gimmick. It served what was happening on film and the overall story that was being told, and the visuals.
Yeah, all very intentional.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. She's just so good.
Maya Deren, check her out.
Maya Deren's the best.
I'd be hard pressed to put anybody else above her in terms of so glad we did ShortHaus.
Yeah. I mean, I wrote a few questions down, but really it's just like, what director surprised you the most? Her, obviously.
Yeah.
Who would you recommend to like up and coming filmmakers? Maya Deren, of course. It's just, there's so much to learn from her, and just, even if you're not trying to make something strange and surreal, just understanding how she's using the camera and movement to just convey the strange story that she is conveying. You just watching film, if you're doing it intentionally, is its own film school. And that's part of why I love writing the blogs and doing all this research. Is like, I come from a visual arts background, but I didn't have anyone teach me how to hold a camera or use or what even the elements of filmmaking are. And I'm just all self-taught. So just diving into a different filmmaker each month and really discovering their process and their way of thinking, everything that goes into it, that's been my film school. That's been how I've learned so much over the last year and a half at this point,
Now we just got to make films.
Now we just got to make films.
We've asked our patrons to do it. Now we must rise to the challenge.
Yeah.
But yeah, are there any other filmmakers who were a standout to you, surprised you, didn't surprise you?
Didn't surprise me. I mean, someone that surprised me was actually Lud Stampeck, because I don't even know exactly why we chose him. He might have been one of your picks. Just, he has these hand-drawn animations on Canopy that are lovely. But actually diving into his feature-length work and seeing that there are these very involved, in-depth, well-researched documentaries about German art and the history of fascism, how it's carried on to today, and looking at it through like a lens of sculpture, portrait painting. One of them is just like game shows and how that's kind of communicates with the American occupation over there. Like, game shows were kind of becoming imported and then had their own version developed in the country. Just so much interesting weaving of just and uncovering it just through archival research and then kind of organizing it into a film is just...
Yeah, his films, I don't know if, like, you can certainly watch his films to speak on their own. I think learning about the historical and cultural things that were happening around him at the time certainly shed new light on them, and I think enhanced the experience of watching a lot of his films. But yeah, he was, he was another one who's just like, this is film, and I'm sure there are other animation filmmakers and stuff who have, filmed films and tell stories similar to that. And I don't want to say exactly like that, but it was new to me to see all the different ways he kind of, whether it was his documentaries or his animated shorts, it's just unique for me to kind of see his take on things coming from his background.
I'm forgetting the name, but my favorite artist, video film artist that you bought me the book, Elizabeth, right? Always forgetting her name for some reason, but does a similar thing where it's looking into archival things and then taking the text of that and layering it over some very evocative, like whether they're 3D renderings and then layering on top like archival video or something she's recorded and kind of mixing that. So it's like, it is something that's done more in the art world, which is where Lutz is coming from. There's such a focus on our history if you have like a very traditional artistic upbringing, which is why I also respond to it a lot. It's just, there is so much rich history and finding ways to layer that in.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Cool. What was her name? Why can't we think?
Price. Elizabeth Price.
There it is.
I don't think it would come to me. Amazing.
Not to go on a tangent, but last week I watched that Anselm film by Wim Wenders about that German artist.
Yeah.
That is remarkable. And again, just a person who's, while Wim Wenders would be the filmmaker in that context, it is a uniquely told kind of documentary about the life of this visual artist who makes these extraordinary locations of art. I won't even call it works. They're locations. They're things you walk through and experience, and it's you would love it. So you have to check that out.
Yeah, I do have to check that out. Land art is its own thing.
A blowtorch is one of his favorite tools.
Hey, that makes sense. That works. Whatever works.
Yeah. But again, I'm very pleased with how this first year and the beginning of this second year of ShortHaus has gone. I think it can only continue to grow and do amazing things.
I hope so. I'm going to try.
Yeah. And I will be attending the programs as often as I can, even though I will not be leading them anymore. We've got some good directors coming up.
Yeah.
To later today is Charlotte Wells.
Yes. It was lovely and heartbreaking, and I recommend you watch all of her work, but also leave some time for crying afterwards.
Yeah, it's a heartbreak sandwich. It's heartbreaking. It's beautiful. And it's just more heartbreaking.
The next month is Reed Davenport, who makes documentaries from a very personal experience.
Which I think will tie in very well with Charlotte Wells, with how much her personal life influences the stories she's telling.
Yep.
And I think you mentioned in your blog, while her films are about queer characters, they are not focused on the kind of adolescent or second adolescence, or, they're less focused about the identity and more just experiences that queer characters are having in her films.
Yeah. That are separate from their queerness,
yes.
Just, you love to see it. Those stories are important and great, but you also just want to see people who happen to be queer, but are crying because their dad died, not because hate crime.
So we got Charlotte Wells, then we got Reed Davenport, and then rounding out the summer
is Rungano Nyoni,
who has a short called Listen, which was one of those shorts I watched where I got very angry watching it.
Yeah.
But she also has a feature film, I Am Not a Witch, on Canopy as well. So those will be fun to explore.
I watched Listen. I have yet to watch the other.
Oh, you did watch Listen.
I did. Oh, it's very upsetting.
Yeah.
There's a theme, usually.
Yes.
And then I guess we might as well announce the fall ones.
Yeah, we just decided on them last week.
So for September, which is like leading into Hispanic Heritage Month, we have Cristobal Leon and Joaquin Cosina, which is actually a joint group team of animators from Chile. And they make actually like life-size stop motion animation, which is like they're
so good.
They're so good. They're painting like a whole room and then still photographing it frame by frame. It's amazing and also haunting, and I'm so excited. And then after that, we have Jonathan Glazer, which
most will know that name now from his most recent film, Zone of Interest. We'll be looking at a couple of his shorts that are on Canopy, and also, he's American. Is he American?
Don't ask me questions. I don't have the answer.
He's Western, we'll say. I'm 99% sure he's Western European, American, Canadian, or Australian.
Something
Western.
Something in there. He's our spooky eye for October.
Yes, we almost did him last year, but then we found Kitchen Sink.
Yeah.
Good thing we did.
Now we can talk about Zone of Interest in October, which is
you saw it.
Also upsetting. So many upsetting things.
Come to ShortHaus. Watch upsetting short films with us so we don't have to live with it on our own.
Yeah. And then for November, we're doing Sky Hopinka, which is somebody you found, and I've only watched one.
Yeah, so an indigenous Native American visual artist who does combinations of visual media, film, installations, and there has snippets or some of his pieces online. Some of them, I'm interested to see if we can pull off any multi-screen or not.
That would be...
But some of his installations are like several screens going at once, which just sound like...
Which is, that's also something that's more common in the art world. Video artists of that world. So I'm excited to kind of explore that because multi-channel installations, it just adds a lot. It does break away from that rectangle of a screen because you're projecting it onto
Mm-hmm.
wall or objects.
And
So
I
yeah,
think
I'm excited.
the viewer becomes more of a, I'd say,
Yes.
active participant because
Much
they can
more.
only look at
Much more directly.
so much of the visual information that's around them in those instances. So they suddenly get some control over how the art is presented to them.
Yeah,
which
because
is neat.
you can walk around, and that's great. And I'm also doing a video art class in August, so I'll be looking at artists who work similarly with multi-channel installations, or just like the different methods that contemporary video artists are using nowadays, and how they break from the conventions that filmmaking kind of sets out. And I think that'll be a fun time. It'll be like an interactive playing with like equipment that we have, and we'll just be right over in Studio C, which is through that wall.
Through the wall.
So yeah, come to that sometime in August.
Sometime in August.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dates to be determined.
No, they're determined. I just
Dates
don't
to be
remember.
known and announced.
They're in the program.
Check the
Here it is.
Fountaindale events calendar.
Yeah.
Most should be on there. So. But, well, thank you for putting this together. This was fun.
Yeah. Well, I wanted somewhat of a send off for you
Thank you.
because we built this together, and I'm gonna keep going.
Please
But
do.
yeah, you were a huge part of it. I wouldn't
Thank
have. So I don't know how I would have started as a little, because it was within my first year that you were like, "Do you want to do this thing?" I was like, "Yes, please." I would not have been able to get the ball rolling.
Well,
so
it would
early on.
only be a shadow of what it is without all the work that you
Oh.
do. The blog
Wow,
pieces
thank you. Okay.
are some of the most incredible things that I have seen produced in the studio. So
I'm just a big old nerd, is all. And I just put it out there because I liked it. I like it. It's hard, but I like it.
it's awesome.
Thank you.
So
Okay.
ShortHaus Cinema. Come
Yeah.
check it out.
Come check it out,
We meet-
please.
The first Tuesday of every month for the most part,
Except when
except
it's
for
not.
today.
Except for today, and except for November, because that also lines up with the election.
Da-da-da.
And I don't even think we're meeting on a Tuesday. We might be meeting on Thursday. But again, check the events calendar.
Yeah. Check the events calendar.
It's all
Call
there,
the studio.
not in my head.
We'll tell you what's going on.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Google it.
Yeah. Cool.
All right.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Goodbye. And he just disappears. Green screen.